Hey guys, kinggath here with another patch for Sim Settlements. This is patch 4.2.0, which I'm calling War. War always changes. And that is due to a new feature I've been wanting to add to Conqueror for a while. But before we get into that, and I'll show you guys how to use it, that's why we're at the a new game screen here. I want to talk about the other major feature and the reason that we went to 4.2.0 instead of 4.1.8, I think we were going to be up to. And that is because something I've been talking about for a while, and I'm not going to go into the specifics of it because it's technical, boring stuff, but I have changed all of the city plans that are built into Rise of the Commonwealth and the 3-in-1 version of Sim Settlements so that they are now compacted. And what that means for you guys, without getting into the technical stuff, is they will take less time to build. They require less items, so it will be easier for your system to handle, and in general, they should just run smoother. So city plans have been improved for the Rise of the Commonwealth versions, and we will be releasing scripts to allow community-made city plans to have the same process applied to them, and then we will be doing in the future the same process to the complex versions of the Rise of the Commonwealth city plans and to the city plan contest entries mods. So you're going to see more announcements about compacting, and all that means is performance improvement. And as a secondary bonus, it also greatly improves or greatly reduces the amount of script data that the city plans use, which if you guys have been following along all the adventures of Sim Settlements, you'll know that that was a big scary thing at one point because the game has a ridiculously low cap on the amount of script data that it can store in your game. So that is a huge, huge improvement, but it also is one of those ones where on a technical level, it's a pretty big change, so we went to the 4.2.0, and so if you guys find any problems with the new patch, you might want to roll back and hang tight on 4.1.7 until we get a chance to work some of these out. But we have tested these thoroughly. In fact, I want to give a big thanks to Phil T. Casual and XV for going to town on testing these compact city plans. And then there was a handful of you guys who joined in on the forums and also helped out. So big thanks to all of you. We need testers in order to pull off all the stuff we're doing with Sim Settlements, because there's just so many moving parts that it's impossible to test it all by myself or just with the handful of people on the team who get into that type of stuff. So any of you out there who are interested in helping out test with Sim Settlements, definitely contact me on our forums. We'd love to have more folks helping out with that. All right, on to the core feature of this patch. So on a new game, there's now a new section of the startup wizard from Conqueror. So with Conqueror, I've always viewed this as a way to give kind of that RTS or Civ game style scenario generation where you get to choose a bunch of options and alter the game world before you get started. And there's a part of that we haven't explored much and that we are now going to explore a lot more fully going forward. And that is the idea that the settlements don't necessarily have to start controlled by settlers or civilians. They can be controlled by factions. So we've added a new section down at the bottom of the Conquer City options called War Options, and this will 100% be expanded greatly in the future, but for now I'm going to go over what this does. And what I just said before is roughly what it does, but I'm going to show you how you can use it, and that is you can set up all of these cities to be conquered by various factions. So this will take into account your faction packs you have installed, and we've included a few default options to make sure that there are some things that can happen even if you don't use any faction packs. But if you use a bunch of faction packs, they will add to this system. And speaking of faction pack authors, I'm going to get some new information for you guys because some of the things that you may have glossed over or not spent a lot of time on will have a huge impact on the system, and you might want to do that. So keep an eye out for an update to the Faction Leaders Toolkit. All right, so let's go into War Options. So when you first go here, it's going to start it with it turned off, and you can turn this on, and then it will expose a bunch of new options. So I'm going to go to the most important ones, and then I'll double back and explain what all these different options do. So the first thing is you can choose which factions you want to be used in the system. And as you can see, we by default included the ones that we needed for the Conqueror storyline. So these are available for use right away. So Gunners, Minutemen, and Raiders can all be used to take over different settlements. And the way it works is whatever factions are on the right here in this list on the right, those will be randomly chosen to take over the settlements that you choose in this list here, this Pick Settlements list. And just like when you're picking settlements for city plans, By default, the ones on the left that stay locked are the ones that we have determined have some issues, such as they have quests involved that might get screwed up if you mess with them. But it's actually a lot safer to use a faction in those, even when they have quests involved, than it is to use a city plan, because the faction won't block anything up, whereas the city plans could block something important for a quest. So that's why they're disabled by default. So if you wanted to add all of these, you absolutely could. If you wanted to walk out of the vault and see Sanctuary Hills overrun by raiders, you could absolutely do that. Be tough, but you could do it. And so these are all here. The other settlements that will be removed from here are going to be ones like this, where I don't have a city plan installed for them. In fact, this one probably shouldn't even be in this list at all, because I don't think New Cafeola counts as a typical settlement that can have settlers. But that's a bug we'll solve at another time. But basically, just like the other screen, everything you have on the right here will all get conquered by a random faction from the list that you have here. Now, what's really cool about this system is you can actually use it independently of the city plans. So if you were to go back to the main menu here and remove all of the city plans or all the settlements from this menu that used to be here, so if you've gone through this startup system, you're familiar with this. This lets you choose which settlements will be pre-built. You can actually remove all of these. So if we just say go in here and remove all of the settlements by just trading them out of here. And I'm actually going to demonstrate this because there is a little quirk that's going to come up. With this new system, I had to make a little bit of a change, and it results in what'll feel like weird behavior, but it's totally normal and it doesn't cause any problems. Is after you push accept here to trade, you'll see that you can see in front of me there were some floating items, and maybe you can't see it on the resolution of this YouTube video. You'll know it in game, but it actually, in order to do this correctly, the character has to drop these items in order for it to be detected. So they get created for just a second each in your game, and that's totally fine. But then you exit back out of here. So now we've removed all the settlements so that no city plans are going to be built, but the war options will still function even when you do that. So you could just set it up if you just want to not use city plans, but you would love to have a whole bunch of new areas in the game seeded with tons of enemies that you can fight, that you can scout out and interact with, or even just go to and talk to. You can basically set that up with this. So we've got that set up now, and I'm actually going to show you how quick it is. That's one of the reasons I want to do this, is because it goes substantially faster when you're not building city plans. Though, one of the other beautiful things about this content being paired up with the compact city plan stuff I mentioned earlier is that compacting should improve the build speed of the pre-build by a fair amount, so that you guys should be able to get up and running with a new scenario with all these city plans built and all these factions taken over in a pretty relatively quick amount of time. All right, so now let's go over what some of these options are that maybe are a little more confusing. So first up, faction guard density. Basically what that does is it looks at the number of civilians that are living in those settlements. So the civilian count could be the generic settlers that are there when you start the game. For example, in Oberland Station, there's 2 settlers. Those would be counted as 2 civilians. If you use the pre-build city plans, depending on the level the city plan is, which this is all stuff I've explained in other videos. If you haven't used this system, dive in. There's a lot of cool options you can play with. But basically, the faction guard density, it will have a percentage of guards to match the number of civilians. So say, for example, if you had 20 civilians in a settlement and the faction guard density, and this is explained, a lot of these things that I'm talking about actually are explained in the game. So if you're tired of hearing me talking, you want to just go in and play with it, go nuts. It should explain it to you. For everybody else, so you want to keep listening to me ramble, here we go. So for example, faction guard density low, if there were 20, it would do about 30% ratio. So then there would be for every 3 settlers, there would be 1 guard. And then for medium, it's approximately 2 to 3. And then for high, it's practically a 1-to-1. Gets it pretty close to that. And then random is at each settlement, and this is the default option, the ratio will be randomly between 1 and 1. It'll be 1, 2, and 3 to 1. So that you can get a feel like each of the amount of impact that the factions have on the settlements is different throughout, so you can get kind of some randomness. And there's going to be more things I'm going to add randomness to in the future, but this is all part of the scenario generator, is trying to generate a system where you guys have infinite replayability here. So then we go down here. By default, conquerors are hostile. And if you're not familiar with conquerors and liberators, effectively those are our names for good guys and bad guys. So conquerors tend to be factions like the Raiders, whereas liberators are going to be factions like the Minutemen. Now it's up to the faction packs themselves to determine this. I will tell you that the default ones that are installed only the Minutemen are liberators, and the raiders and gunners are both considered conquerors. Now, what you can do here is you can actually, if you know you're going to go in and play a bad guys, you could reverse these. So you could go in and change the conquerors so that they're neutral to you, and the liberators so that they are automatically hostile to you. But by default, I assume most people, I tried to fill options out that would just make sense without anyone going in here and playing with these options. So for example, if you just want to test the system out and you don't want to have to dink around with all these extra options, if you just turn this on, all these options are going to be set up in a way that would make sense and that would feel natural in the game. And then lastly, we added an option to turn off faction decorations, because I know some of you guys have found that a lot of those items end up floating out in the middle of the sky or end up just getting piled up in piles. So if you have trouble with faction decorations normally, you might want to come in here and turn this off before you run the system, just to avoid those issues, because the faction decorations will get placed if the faction has decorations established like the raiders do in the default system, and a lot of the faction packs have those set up as well. So basically, if we once we're done setting our options, we hit go back. You can still play with all of the other options for the city plans, so you can choose them. You can set up the levels, the settlers, etc. And then the war stuff is just kept separate. But I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. I'm ready, just to show you how quick this goes. And then just like the normal thing, you still have the final confirmation, and it'll go, if you have HUD framework, the little thing up in the corner will show up, and it'll just speed past the things that's not using. So we're not using city plans, so placing objects is going to go really fast. Now the phase where it adds the factions is going to be the one that's called populating cities, I believe is what we labeled it. And so you'll see that that's going to take a little bit of time here, but it's nowhere near the amount of time of doing all the city plans. So if you just want to quickly get a scenario up and running, and you can see right there how quickly it's burning through that. It just takes a couple of minutes to get all of the factions in place and controlling the various settlements. So even if you are using city plans, this does not add a substantial amount of time to your pre-startup. It adds just a few extra seconds. So this is a really powerful system. And one of the cool things about this is it gives you a couple of new ways to play the game. So first off, it lets you have new enemies or new neutrals to come across as you're exploring the Commonwealth. But it also, if you're going to engage with the Conqueror mechanics for taking over the settlements, it now makes your scouting actually real. You actually get to see up front how many different NPCs are going to be there, who's in control of the settlements you're about to attack, and you can prepare yourself accordingly. Because by default in the Conqueror system, when you run an assault, a faction is randomly chosen to defend against you, and then they are added after the fact when you enter the area. This way you can find out in advance. You'll get to see the exact NPCs you're going to be up against and prepare yourself. On top of that, you actually even have the option, if you wanted to, you could kind of go commando and start sniping them down, or just run in guns blazing and just take on the settlement all by yourself, and then put down a war planner's desk and claim the settlement that way. So you have way more flexibility this way with this new system, and I'm looking forward to hearing your guys' feedback on this. Any new ideas you guys have for options and things in the startup wizard there, definitely go post those in the simsettlements.com forums under the suggestions. And beyond that, so that's the patch stuff. There's probably a couple of bug fixes, but this was such a big amount of stuff to deal with. And as many of you guys have seen, my youngest son was in the hospital the last couple of weeks, and so I did not have as much time as I would have wanted to dedicate to this patch. Fortunately, we had been working up to this for a while, and this was already done before all this terrible stuff happened. And by the way, an update on that is he is doing very, very well. There's a very good chance that he's actually already home by the time this video goes live, because he was recovering so well, which is phenomenal news for my wife and I. And so anyway, back onto the stuff support to you guys, which is all this fun stuff you get to play with, which again, I'm so excited to hear what you guys think about this. I had a lot of fun testing this and playing around with it. But the other thing to mention is that we just posted the videos yesterday for the Masters contest. So we finally got those videos put together. I would love more of you guys to vote. Go watch all 3 of those videos, and then head to the simsettlements.com forums, which you can get to via simsettlements.com/vote. And let us know which of those you think is the best, because the winner from the popular vote is going to take home $500. And if you're interested in joining the City Plan contest, we always have one going on. There's another one going on to build the castle right now, and you've got until December 28th to get a right in for that, excuse me. And there's a whole section on the City Plan contest on our forums with rules and explanations and inspiration, and a lot of busy people there talking about their designs, sharing ideas. We'd love to have more of you guys join us. All right, I think this is going to be our last patch until the holidays. So I think the next one will be sometime in early January. So Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, all that stuff, and whatever other holidays I'm missing that happen in that period of time. But guys, thank you so much, and definitely check out the patch notes for any details I missed. All that said, take care and enjoy the mods.